Hughes was born February 1st, 1902 in Joplin, Missouri. The first 13 years of his life he spent with his grandma in Lawrence, Kansas, and later followed his mother to Cleveland, attending Central High School. At Central High, he read poems by Carl Sandburg and Walt Whitman, which influenced him to publish his own writings. After high school, he attended Columbia University, but he did not return after his freshman year. He was welcomed almost immediately by authors of the Harlem Renaissance when he published a few poems in the journal Crisis. Wanting a bachelor's degree, Langston enrolled in Lincoln University, but he sailed away to Europe and Africa to work as a messman before the classes began. In 1932, he traveled to Russia to participate in a Soviet-produced film about race relations in America, but the production fell through. Later, in 1937, he traveled to Spain to cover the Civil War as a newspaper correspondent for the Baltimore Afro-American. In 1926, he published his first book of poetry, The Weary Blues, which earned him a place at the forefront of the Harlem Renaissance. He published 16 books of poetry, 2 novels, 7 collections of short stories, 2 autobiographies, 4 nonfiction books, 10 children books, and 25 plays. He died in 1967 in a Harlem hospital.
Hey guys, what's up? Now that you've got some background information on Langston Hughes, here's some of the stuff to look for from the modernism aspect of his poetry. Some things you should know about Langston Hughes' writing, and is really a general statement for most modernistic writers, is that the whole point of modernism is to be different. Langston Hughes was writing his poetry, and the main aim was to be different than the mainstream poetry that had come before his time. It was a lot of breaking down barriers in writing and art and all kinds of things. And especially in that time, a big problem was racial injustice and racial prejudice. And so his writing was a lot focused on breaking down racial barriers. Also, a big characteristic of modernism is symbolism. You'll see a lot of symbolism in Hughes' writing and all modernism writing together. In case you're interested, I got my information from a couple of Bloom's articles that I cited below in my bibliography. You can visit if you need to. And I also included the poems from Langston Hughes on a website and one of the links below too if you want to look that up as well. We will be discussing a couple poems by Langston Hughes, 2 of his more well-known ones. One would be The Negro Speaks of Rivers, and the other one will be Will V-Day be Me Day too? First one, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, is a pretty popular one. The background information about this one: Langston Hughes was on a train actually going across the Mississippi River when he came up with the inspiration of this poem. He remembered what his parents and his grandparents told him about that river and all the history of the African Americans that went into it. Many times it was real bad news for African American slaves during the Civil War time. If they went down that river and got traded away, they would never get back to where they came from. But also, it wasn't all bad. Abraham Lincoln also used to go down that river to sell his goods from his farm, and that's where he really saw the horrors of slave trading, which I guess eventually you could argue ended the Civil War. In that poem, you'll see that it's written in free verse, which hadn't really been explored, or an explored writing style at that time, which is part of being different in modernism. And also you see some symbolism to look for in that poem. And there's one line where he compares the Negro bloods, the water running in the rivers. The second poem, Will V-Day be Me Day Too, is a little bit longer poem. It's the background information on that one is pretty much that Langston wrote it so a black Civil War vet from World War II had written a letter home, and it's questioning the rightness of the position he's in. He just helped liberate Jews from concentration camps and get rid of fascism in the world, but back home he's stuck with the Jim Crow law, and segregation awaits him for when he comes home. So he's questioning whether, if he goes home to a terrible culture where there's still segregation, will he be able to celebrate Victory Day just like everybody else does? In this poem, there's a lot of symbolism, and it's packed full of symbolism that you'll see when you read through it, and also all kinds of other modernistic stuff. When you read this poem, remember that Langston Hughes had written this as a direct response to segregation in this country. That this poem was one of the poems that he really wanted to affect his culture, and that was helping to break down the racial barriers of that time. This poem was supposed to let everybody know how the African Americans felt about World War II and what was going on in their country. He wanted this poem to help everybody else out. So just keep these things in mind as you read these poems.